Good morning, everybody, and welcome in this session. Thank you for participating, and thank you for participating in Roto4All. So, therefore, let me say this is a dual event today in this digital format, a webinar as we have become accustomed to use as a term, and in the upcoming future in October we will have an event at the Grand Hotel Baglieri in Florence, an event dedicated to Rotogravure. So here we are going to talk about Rotogravure. So welcome everybody. Welcome, willkommen, bienvenue. Thank you for the interpreter who is going to translate for all those who are not Italian mother tongue. My name is Matteo Bordone and I am a journalist, a writer, and Acimga contacted me. Well, I should admit, I'm not an expert in printing technology, but when I was contacted by Acimga asking me to be the moderator of this event, I've been told about what Rotogravure is, and I got aware of the fact that there was a space in this field that referred to Rotogravure as a symbol of printing and circulation of printing media. And actually, Rotogravure is one of the few industrial processes having occupied space in cinema production, for example, since, let me say, the 40s onwards, and especially in the US cinema production, there was a style, a movement, and every time news were published, these news were published through Rotogravure, and we always see this scene with a Rotogravure machine running, and while the voice, hear all about it. So these news hitting the tabloids and the newspapers, and there you see the film running, and every time the cinema you had news about a collective event and regarding the society, always you had a Rotogravure machines, because the Rotogravure machine has always been a symbol, the symbol of printing, large volume printing, and there was a great admiration towards such a machine. And so for everybody who do not actually know Rotogravure as like in my case, we can only but admire it. And so therefore now, we obviously, Rotogravure has been existing for such a long time, always running in a new, unique way, an extraordinary way. And today we have dedicated an event to it. It is still modern despite its age, and it's very much rare that in such an era where we have such an explosion of new technology, this technology specifically, Rotogravure specifically, has remained modern and contemporary and still very dynamic. So as a matter of fact, Acimga told me that cinema production in a certain way has been better, at least lately, as compared to the industry itself, to tell about the extraordinary aspects about Rotogravure. And so today we are going to try and and expand on this, expanding on the characteristics of Rotogravure technology, which deserves actually attention and potentially also your investments. So we will start with the Gruppo Rotocalco Italiano, and we will listen to Gianmatteo Maggioni, who is the coordinator of the Gruppo Rotocalco. Thank you, Matteo. First of all, I would like to welcome everybody participating in this Rotogravure Roto4All webinar. And, this is just, a preview of what we are going to have in Florence on the 23rd of October. So, the Italian Rotogravure Group was established in 2019 with the intention of educating and promoting Rotogravure technology, because for such a long time, no publications were circulated with regard to the importance of such a technology, and for this reason our intention is to spread the Italian know-how as global excellence. And the very first step that we have started together, in addition to tackling disinformation and fake news, was through a publication. And this is Loving Rotogravure, Know It to Appreciate It. And after the introduction relating to the technology and color, we described in a very simple way, so that everybody could understand the language, expanding on the characteristics of a Rotogravure. So therefore the cylinder engraver, the color, letterpress, and specializing on the points of strength and the applications of the technology. This document, this publication, has also been translated into English in order to make it accessible to the international market. Also, we have identified 4 areas of activities where to concentrate our efforts. The first relates to the organization of events where Roto4All, and this is our first example with this webinar, so regarding the promotion. The second step refers to education with courses dedicated to schools, industries, brand owners, creative agencies, so to provide them with information with regard to the options that Rotogravure technology offers. And then we have the editorial part with regard to the publication of technical publications relating to specific aspects of Rotogravure, and obviously and last but not least, obviously, we have the regulatory activity, where we have already provided our contribution in terms of ISO standard with a draft on packaging printing 190301, and in the next meeting that is scheduled before the year end, we have a proposal for a new ISO standard on Rotogravure, because in terms of ISO standards, there are no specific standards dedicated to Rotogravure. And this is obviously a challenge that we have ahead of us and that we are facing with a great enthusiasm. So that was it for my presentation. I hope that also the next presentations that you're going to listen are going to be as interesting, as engaging as you expect. So thank you to Mr. Maggioni for the presentation of the Italian Rotogravure group. Now I would like to leave the floor to another speaker, so the director of Acimga, Andrea Briganti. So good morning, everybody. My name is Andrea Briganti. As I was introduced by Matteo, I am director of Acimga, and I'm also the director of Carta Grafica. So this is a unique experiment in the industrial field in Italy, because together with the Carta Grafica Federation, we have set up a supply chain line for printing and converting fields, so including flexo, digital printing, and rotary printing. So we have members, all the companies operating in Italy and abroad in this field, and we also have Assografici, so the Italian association comprising printing companies, and Assografica grouping producers of printing technology. So therefore, this is a unique project in Italy, and specifically Acimga, as I was telling you, applies across channels because it represents all applications. And currently, in terms of our association, we are currently focusing on specific themes, because in this way we can better serve markets, we can know them better, and we can work on the advocacy for all the companies participating in it. One of the first projects is the Gruppo Rotocalco, the Italian Rotogravure group. We have established last year, in February 2019, and we have already produced many outputs. And specifically today, we have found many members and people participating in this seminar. Thank you for participating. And slightly more than one third are international attendees. So this is definitely, I would say, a successful event, and we hope we can satisfy your expectations. So we will expand on the total cost of co-ownership, because obviously we know more about, we will know more about the costs. And Professor Baglieri will expand on this, and also we will expand on the theme regarding sustainability, because any technological approach, also where chemicals are used, the approach must take into consideration the 3 sustainability types, about which Mrs. Bettina will talk later on. So therefore, this webinar and the themes we are going to discuss, not only from a technical perspective, but also in terms of approach to the market, to create advocacy communities, and in order to remove technological barriers, and in order to promote information regarding Rotogravure, because currently the Rotogravure technology is experiencing sort of standby, because of course it's very much important that we need to work on advocacy and communication more. So after this brief introduction, after this political introduction, I would also like to share with you, let me say, the numbers and the figures behind Rotogravure technology, because as an association it is very much important that we focus on the market and we are able to underline and inform the market. So as I let me say. So we are talking about statistics because today we decided to avoid giving you projections because, of course, we are experiencing a very unique situation with the coronavirus pandemic. And here we see 17 billion of euros in terms of world trade of total machinery for the graphic converting and paper industry until year end. And here you see the breakdown in terms of geographic regions, and you see in Europe Germany followed by Italy and then France, and etc. And you see that this is a very much interesting figure to consider. And here we have the major importing and exporting countries in 2019. Andrea was mentioning the economic cycle and the relationship with the circular economy and sustainability of Rotogravure. And these are exactly the themes of the next speakers. And so let's talk about the total cost of ownership. And in this case, I will leave the floor to Mr. Vincenzo Baglieri, Professor of Practice of Operations and Technology Management at SDA Bocconi. So I believe, however, that it seems that, so tell me what I should do. So maybe, Andrea, do you want to finish your presentation? So maybe should I give the floor back to you, or should we proceed with Vincenzo? So maybe Andrea? Okay, so I give back, so I do apologize, because with, we have to be patient with, some technical glitches in these times. So again, I would like to give the floor back to Andrea Briganti, Director of Acimga, providing statistics relating to the rotogravure industry. Okay, sorry about that. So I would like to tell you, well, of course, we will circulate the data to all those who will ask for them. I would like to conclude by saying that the European and Italian know-how in this specific sector in using Rotogravure has reached levels of excellence, and we have seen, in fact, supporting and corroborating data in imports and exports. So I will stop here. So I will leave the floor to the next speakers. So thank you for your attention. So, okay, now the floor to Vincenzo Baglieri, Professor of Practice of Operations and Technology Management at SDA Bocconi. And he will talk about the total cost of ownership of Rotogravure. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Matteo. Thank you, everybody. So very rapidly, I'm going to share with you my screen so that you can follow the slides, and the purpose is to tell you concisely what are the most important relevant aspects relating to Rotogravure technology, and these are this is the content that we are going to go through in this specific presentation, and we will talk about the goal methodology, the key facts, and the way towards differentiation. So my objective, I will describe my objective. I will describe very briefly the methodology and the key facts, as I said, and I will share with you also my first insights with regard to the way towards differentiation, which will be further analyzed in depth during the next meeting in October. So let me see whether I can get to the next slide. Okay, so first of all, the first goal was measuring in the proper way the impact of Rotogravure in the economics of any business. Andrea Briganti already anticipated about this. Obviously, the choice of technology depends, well, in the first place, on the type of work that one should accomplish, but also on the investments that are needed in order to apply it. And especially in this industry, well, in these past years, especially downstream graphics and digital printing, well, Rotogravure technology suffered a lot because of the radical changes in the demand and fragmented volumes, high quality standards required, and a great variety. And all these elements, as a matter of fact, even if these are key characteristics of Rotogravure technology, but because of the fragmentation and the minimum production orders required and creative requirements, then created a clash with this technology, and the initial cost for this technology is in fact rather high, and therefore it is necessary to find the most appropriate way to measure the impact of Rotogravure. And the methodology that we have adopted, well, this is not something that I have invented, but of course this refers to the sourcing of industrial goods, assets, and therefore we should not only take into account the cost for the purchase, so the initial investment, but the most important thing to consider is how this cost is then amortized and depreciated over time, because obviously this also creates additional costs in the organization, and this is called total cost of ownership. And this was developed in order to improve technology further on in all the industries, so going from mechanics to all the automation, etc., where the risk of competition based on the purchase price and the initial investments could lead to a war regarding pricing. And this, of course, unfortunately, results in Highlander strategy, ending up with an undervaluation of the relevant indicators. And therefore, the only one that remains is the only one that guarantees in the market the prices that the market expects. Well, actually, the Rotogravure market is a market that still offers great opportunities for development, and we've seen in the slides before presented by Briganti, there is a very strong focus in Western countries, especially with the leading country being Germany and followed by Italy. So having a heritage, having a legacy, differentiating legacy in this field as compared to other countries also in Europe, and of course this leads to a very rapid development of the Far Eastern countries, especially China. So on one side we needed to protect this industry, on the other side we need also to improve its potential. And so the insights I'm about to present to you are based on the total cost of ownership. This is based on the fact that we should consider all the costs that the asset develops along its life cycle. And so obviously this is a common factor that can be measured regardless of the country in which it is the application is used. And obviously And therefore, it also it considers the true impact in terms of costs of the technology, based on the principle that the cost of ownership is determined by the distribution along the entire life cycle of the asset, plus all the recurring costs that are generated on a yearly basis, on a year-on-year basis. So the data that I'm about to present to you represent a range of average figures that I have collected and all on my own, and also thanks to the collaboration of 3 producers based in Italy, and one is an international group, and 2 users who confirmed their readiness in sharing their data in order for me to again collect the data. And here, this is a summary slide that allows you to understand. So let's start from the first element. So the cost of ownership of Rotogravure is a cost that needs to be measured based on the principle that this technology has a very long life cycle. So every producer may say that in 20 years it has been using the technology, and this is exactly the time span. And equipment has also been installed more than 20 years ago, and the maintenance required is really marginal. And the periodic revamping every 10 years approximately, so maybe it might be also necessary to do it more frequently, but this is in any case based on specific standards requiring it to be carried out every 10 years. So therefore we can say that the Rotogravure technology is very reliable, and it's an old style, there's a lot of mechanics, lots of steel, and this guarantees great reliability for a long period of time. Well, this reliability requires a very high investment from 1.5 million euros, or even more for more complex installations. I considered 2.5 million euros. This is the initial cost of ownership, and this 2.5 million euros are amortized over a period of 20 years, and over the long period, this cost of purchase is distributed marginally on the comprehensive cost of the technology. The true cost, however, is the cost of cylinders for the purchase and the maintenance of cylinders, and this depends on production volumes. But also here, making estimates of an average printing company, I thought that, we should consider cylinders per year, and so complementary technology being considering an investment of 1.5 million euro over 10 years. So therefore, for the cylinders, going back to the cylinders, let me say 400,000 euros are considered for 10 years and even more. So the paradox is the fact that the machinery, which requires a high investment at the beginning, also generates recurring costs that in fact have a very long life cycle of 10 years and more, but these are the ones that risk freeze the assets of the company. And the Rotogravure technology also needs a complementary technology, as I was mentioning before, and this is the value for the technology, because the efforts in the last years to focus on sustainability refers to the fact that more sustainable ink is used, and so requiring replacement of materials. And in this case, there was a tendency towards coming to the use of one single solvent. And in addition to this technology, complementary technology to recover solvency and in order to reduce the consumption of energy, well, all this can also relate to an investment of 1.5 to million euros, and then this also depends on the size of the machinery, and also considering the data that I have received from the entities which collaborated with me in the collection of the data, I estimated again 1.52 million of euros. And so therefore, again, in this way, we can confirm that the investment for the Rotogravure machine can be depreciated over a period of 20 years. And in addition to this, another cost to be considered refers to the upgrade of technology in terms of electronics, and I estimated this cost at the level of 300,000 euros, and this is appreciated about 10 years. So let me say that the recurring costs are many, and so if properly managed, this machinery requires recurring costs also in terms of labor, in terms of energy, in terms of maintenance, and with regard to labor, we should consider approximately 2 workers per shift. In Italy, we tend to saturate the machinery, so working also on 2 shifts and 3 shifts, but stopping the operation of the machine on weekends. So the philosophy might change, and might change the impact on the cost of ownership, because of course it is more meaningful to saturate the potential of the machinery. But in any case, considering median parameters between the technology being used in Italy and in other markets, internationally speaking, so labor costs range from 160 to 180,000 euros. And then, of course, we have an impact also in terms of energy, and here we can estimate approximately 110 to 130,000 euros in terms of cost of energy. And last but not least, maintenance costs, which in some cases are limited, approximately 1% of the initial investment, but this can also increase depending on the philosophy and approach of producers. So therefore, maybe this, so they have a higher cost of maintenance, but there is a longer time span for the use of the machinery. So therefore, it's worth having a higher initial cost of investment to guarantee the operation of the machinery. So therefore, in this case, we also have to consider inflation. Inflation is currently limited, and especially in Western countries. So, for example, the gap in this divide of the cost of ownership per year of Rotogravure technology in terms of the sizes of the factors that we have mentioned goes from 664,000 euro per year to 785,000 euros per year. Then, of course, again, there are other factors to consider, meaning the complexity of the equipment, etc. But my key focus, upon which I would like to still share with you, if we observe these figures, and if we start from the principle that such technology represents a key investment for any producer printing 30,000 linear meter per year, well, the incidence of the cost of the Rotogravure technology, so by square meter, printed square meter, is rather limited, I should say. Never exceeds 10% or 15% in small batches, the cost of production by square meter. So this means that the quality as a parameter is important, but this cannot be considered as the cost of the technology or only that. As a matter of fact, all producers are trying to meet customer needs as much as possible, focusing on one of the most important factors, and this means the productivity of the system, because the Rotogravure technology has a weak point in a moment of time in which, of course, speed makes the difference, because setup time is rather long with the Rotogravure technology, and so therefore actually this technology represents a weak point for Rotogravure technology, and 50% of the time the technology, the system, the machinery does not run because of setup time. Of course, producers are all trying and working in order to reduce setup time, but actually, let me say, the characteristics of the technology put limitations, physical limitations to setup time. So therefore, even if this is a strategically opportune choice, well, we should not only focus on improving productivity, increasing productivity, because setup time cannot be reduced too much, and therefore this is a sort of vicious whirl, and not necessarily productivity. Higher productivity increases quality if sales volumes are not concurrently increased. So therefore, maybe we needed to focus on different insights. So obviously, if we needed to work on the efficiency and the saturation, well, we needed to focus more on other aspects. So we have to listen to customer needs better, and also the needs of the customers of our customers. And for this reason, it is important to improve competencies. We need to improve hardware competencies, and this is something that we have accomplished over time, but we also need to listen to our customer needs, because in any case, printing technology allows communication, and therefore therefore it is also very much important to understand what brand owners want to communicate, what the agencies intend to do, and therefore we need to understand the mix of offerings that we can develop in order to improve the value chain, providing a closer communication. So obviously strategies must be driven looking at all the stakeholders, and competition should not be only focused on pricing, because this would result in a disruption, a total disruption, a total war, damaging the entire industry. And the key characteristics of rotogravure technology are varied and differentiated, and these should be promoted efficiently. So the ability of the technology to be reliable, replicable, and using a term that in the world of operations has become key. This is a technology that allows dependability, so the ability to replicate many times, a next number of times, always maintaining the same quality, the same performance. So, and this is not at all banal, because this allows to everybody to understand that the first communication choice can be maintained over time. And in addition to that, in general, given these characteristics, given this strong point in being reliable, this is a technology that features great level of sustainability. The cylinder engraver is certainly a high investment, but is an asset on the other side, and lasts over time and remains in the financial statements of the company, but also in the warehouse of the company, without generating an impact on the environment, in terms of replacement, in terms of dismantling of the technology. So maybe in the past these elements have not been perceived so much, but in this moment in time, this can become key. So I would like to close my presentation by sharing with you a few insights with regard to the way towards differentiation. So with regard to the economics post-COVID, sort of saying. Well, all economic crises generate a moment of disruption with the past, and of course this is going to bring us back to a few years ago, but also they're going to generate a sort of polarization of demand. So we are going to have niches, important high value niches being created based on performance, based on variety, where production batches are very small, and on the other side we will see also a demand of what we call a low cost. I don't know whether this should be called, in a better way, value for money. So those markets who would not like to relent on quality, but do not want to pay too high prices. So therefore, the fragmentation of the offering should be reduced with the product concentration, and here efficiency should be improved. This allows for higher production of volumes with replicability and dependability, and allowing a better relationship to be established with the customers. Well, another point, and I do not want to offend anybody, so I believe that with regard to the to Rotogravure technology, digitalization and hybridization, well, this process is still somehow far remote. So core competencies of these producers are mechanic, and the way they control the equipment is still very much based on traditional processes. So it's rare to see beautiful machinery, but these machines are very large, bulky, and therefore in this respect maybe these machines lack Italian design. So now we are seeing increasingly more design being introduced also in this field, and digital technology are very much strong in this. So I believe that maybe it's time to work more aggressively with regard to this new aspect regarding the design, because obviously we needed to understand that digital printing now represents a very important evolution in this sector, and therefore it is very much important also to integrate it with the Rotogravure technology, so to have less steel and more bit, maybe, as I wrote in my slide. Another innovation upon which I believe it's worth focusing our attention is a servicization. So imagining that we can have a product innovation in Rotogravure technology, I believe this is really challenging, ambitious. We can work on design, on setup time, on the integration of the digital printing, but this is not the only focus. Instead of new products, maybe we should focus on new business models, and producers have presented traditional business models so far, and their business has always been concentrated on, producing, developing steel elements, etc. But now it is very much important also to focus on providing services, and obviously if now there are services that are being innovating the field, various industries, and so I believe that also new services can be established and developed in Rotogravure technology, because certainly there is room for it, and therefore I believe Rotogravure technology has controlled the market for so many time, has survived so many crises and so difficult moments, and I believe it's now time to really do something more and set the stage for the future of this technology. So last but not least, to conclude my presentation, I would like also to emphasize the environmental rating. And so far as I know, I believe that Rotogravure technology has not been subjected to a complete life cycle analysis. So this means that we need to take the total cost of ownership and we translate it into the environmental impact. And also here, associations and operators should emphasize this very high environmental rating of Rotogravure technology, because this can be distinctive in relation to what I have said in my presentation. I believe that in the next meeting we will have more time, but this was just to provide you with a few insights and for sharing with you what we have done so far. So thank you, Vincenzo Baglieri, Professor of Practice of Operations and Technology Management at the SDA Bocconi, who explained to us the total cost of ownership of Rotogravure technology. So I would like, first of all, to welcome all those who have joined the sessions and the slides and the presentations are going to be circulated just right at info@acimga.it, and we are video recording the session, and this will be published in our website. So we are receiving the questions, and we will thank you for your participation. Thank you for your questions that we are currently collecting from various countries. So maybe to the east, because it's daytime there, maybe less from the west. But in any case, we have many international representatives. So now, well, in the last decades and in the past few years, even more, every industrial process includes an analysis of circular economy and sustainability. For this reason, I leave the floor to Mrs. Bettina Sustainability and Circular Economy Manager, and she's going to talk about the sustainability, international standards, and future opportunities of Rotogravure technology. The floor to you. Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity given to talk about this. Let me share the screen. I believe you can see, right? Okay, fine. So, thank you, Professor Baglieri, for anticipating many insights that we are going to focus on in this last quarter of an hour. But actually, the objective is to provide you with insights that will be further expanded on in October, talking about the project that we started 1 month ago, having a greater awareness with regard to what sustainability can generate in such a well-characterized industry like Rotogravure. We will talk about sustainability in general terms. We will understand what it means to make a report, and we will focus on the advantages and opportunities that a sustainability report can provide. So talking about sustainability, as Professor Baglieri said, means a changing approach. And in these days with the coronavirus pandemic, everybody asked, where are we going? Where are we heading? This era of consumption is generating crises. Not everything is working properly, and we are facing a situation in which we need to choose. Historically, this is a very strong moment of time, and in 2015, we had the adoption of the 2030 agenda by all United Nations member states, with 17 sustainable development goals with 169 associated targets. And this represents a radical change against the previous approach with the millennial goals. This was based on governments, and the key difference, the true change in the approach intended by the United Nations is the following. So every government is responsible for obtaining the objectives. And on this side, companies are part of the solution, part of the change, a change that does not include any waiver or decrease or reductions, but it means to find new solutions and abilities to meet our needs. And this means, of course, the implementation of circular economy processes. And this had a very strong circular economy refers to an industrial economy that is restorative by intention, by definition, so to reduce the generation of waste, rely on renewable energy, and eliminate the use of toxic chemicals, eradicating totally waste. And for this reason, in 2020, the EU Commission adopted a new circular economy action plan, one of the main building blocks of the European Green Deal, about which we all heard, and we trust it in order to overcome this moment of economic difficulty determined by the coronavirus outbreak. And I would like to specify that the new agenda for the European sustainable development, that is based on the circular economy of production system and consumption, is integrating part of the European strategy through 6 points. And obviously, this is very important to all of us, and Italy is working in the same direction, not only through the adoption of EU directives, but also with very strong initiatives, specific initiatives targeting companies and businesses. And here we have a few examples. So, as Professor Baglieri was underscoring, we need to take into consideration consumer expectations, because companies are customers and suppliers at the same time. And an increasing number of research analyses demonstrate how consumer expectations in terms of values like sustainability and social responsibility have become as much as the final product they buy, consumers buy. And company reputation in terms of environmental social responsibility is a key factor to find a market positioning. And we asked ourselves what sustainable production means, and this is a project by the position paper goal 12 dedicated to this specific topic. And here we have evidence of the fact that sustainable production implies concrete and continuous engagement, commitment, economic investment, but also an investment in terms of know-how and resources, in terms of prevention of negative impact and validation of positive impacts. And I would like to focus on the last bullet point, so meaning that a sustainable business is a company that drafts a sustainability report communicating in a transparent way its impact to the community of stakeholders. This anticipates the second part of my presentation, meaning that we need to report. We need to learn to report. And the analysis, which is part of the project of Cartographica, of which Acimga is a member, starts off from a survey. And one of the objectives, one of the commitments of a sustainable company is communicating data in a transparent and continuous way. Many companies are certified UNI 9001, 10001, but not many draft a sustainability report. And all the positive impact deriving from investments done in order to reduce the environmental impact are not properly communicated. This means that they do not exist on the side of stakeholders. If this is not communicated through an efficient and transparent media, positive impacts are not communicated, are not known. And with regard to Rotogravure technology, the reliability and the sustainability level of this technology needs to be communicated, very much like the management of chemicals and solvents. If this is not communicated, this prevents the company to be positioned in the market properly, because transparent communication must become an integrating part of a strategy, of a company strategy. We need to take into consideration these 4 pillars already present in companies, but it seems that they are sort of hidden. It seems that companies are afraid of communicating them. They think that it's not important to communicate them, but it's exactly the opposite. As much as what Gianmatteo was saying at the very beginning, having an ISO standard reflecting the level of the standard of the sector, it is very much important to report in order to favor benchmarking. So there are many tools in Europe, and very much important in this respect is the global reporting initiative sustainability, so the reporting standard. And the reporting standard, GRI standards, are very important. What I would like to underscore are the principles of reporting in this case. These principles can be adopted across reports, and these are specific principles both in terms of quantity and quality. And so here we have accuracy, balance, clarity, comparability, reliability, and a sustainability report must be accessible. It's not possible that if you browse through the website of a company, you need to navigate in order to find information here and there in order to understand whether the company is engaged in sustainability. The key principles of GRI are materiality, many elements, many factors. Also environmental factors are important, but not necessarily should they be urgent priority, considered as a priority. But the benchmarking with the stakeholders allow to prioritize processes, and this should be updated, and this is a dynamic tool that enables a company to maintain the relationship with its stakeholders alive and nurture sustainability. Well, there are so many tools made available in order to promote stakeholder engagement. There is the 26,000 standard, but obviously the company needs to ask itself what its goal is. Once the goal is clear, well, it's very easy to find the tools. We have a wide range of tools from the simplest to the most sophisticated. Professor Baglieri mentioned sustainable finance, and the European Union got aware of the fact that public funds could not trigger the change, especially such a deep change in real economy, and therefore referring to entrepreneurs, and therefore the European Union leveraged on private finance, and this means making the criteria, the environmental, social, and governance principles key, strategic, and sustainable finance is also based on CRI, based on finance, and also in this case we have a materiality matrix identifying the key topics that the subjects finance subjects should consider when choosing the orientation of their investments. This means that when I invest, I need to identify economic players that meet these requirements, so qualifying the company as sustainable and sustain companies that are ready for the challenge of sustainability and that are already operating in the circular economy. So therefore, finance, sustainable finance, circular economy, social responsibility. So, advantages? Well, advantages are multiple, both for large businesses and small medium enterprises, representing the key part of the European area, and not only in Italy. And in this respect, we can identify both internal and external benefits. Well, in the change in the perspective is what we said at the beginning. The call of action of the sustainable goals. In this case, companies are not part of the problem anymore, but companies are part of the solution. So therefore, a new path should be started. Every company should find this path in terms of what we said before, in terms of restorative processes, regenerative processes, ensuring for the next future generations the fact, for example, of having an approach to a proactive approach to specific problems relating, for example, climate change. And well, data presented by Professor Baglieri is very interesting. Well, and I've been dealing with the sustainability for 20 years, and this is the data is the importance of data is so much clear to me. But it is also very important to underline the importance of sustainability rewards for companies, especially for those companies which start to have a clear reporting of sustainability. And there is a level that Istat considers slightly sustainable, and this is just the basis, the key basis, but this means 4 to 5% of the total level of sustainability accomplished in a company. But this, with just a very slight effort, can be increased on average by 7%. And therefore, so this is... we see in this case that the opportunities and the advantages when implementing sustainability report allows also an increase in productivity, and this is an advantage that can only be recognized by all companies in every field and sectors. Of course, this implies, well, given that sustainability reporting is not so much widespread and clear, well, this implies the ability to manage risks in a more responsible way: reputational risks, financial risks, economic and operating risks, because all this has an impact on everything we do. So increasing civil society awareness of social and environmental issues increases reputational risks due to scandals and the spread of ESG requirements to access to funds increases difficulties or makes it impossible to access those funds. And we need a greater integration of between we need a greater integration of monitoring systems to monitor all these risks closer. In this respect, now I would like to expand on the opportunities. Well, the recovery will have to address the social environmental vulnerabilities that have fueled the crises, such as pollution, biodiversity loss, or lack of means to protect citizens' health. And in this respect, the Green New Deal introduced by the latest budget law calls for sustainable finance even more to overcome this period of economic crisis generated by, again, the health crisis and the coronavirus outbreak. And specifically, the Green New Deal takes into account 7 points, and I have focused on 4 of them. And the third one I would like to read out and explain to you. This means encouraging digital innovation from a green perspective and reduce the digital divide. So meaning, on one side, not only should we search greater efficiency that translates into economic advantages, but greater efficiency in order to reduce the external negative impacts, because in some ways we always need to take into consideration the context at 360 degrees, and we should consider the tools that we have available also from other perspectives, and this strengthens a path that we have already undertaken, and this refers to the National Industry 4.0 plan. So a survey carried out in 2017 on a sample of 200 companies revealed that the goals identified by the companies interviewed, they said, obviously, the improvement of customer services, research of internal efficiency, and the implementation of circularity and environmental sustainability. So what we see here is important. So digitization and the use of technology allows to obtain important results, environmental results in terms of circularity, environmental sustainability, even if as a secondary aspect, and for this reason it is important to measure them in a sustainability report, because I also have advantages and I can minimize environmental impact through tools that were not designed for that specific purpose. As a matter of fact, there is also an analysis carried out by Marco Frey from the University of Pisa and Bocconi, who analyzed these tools included in the Industry Plan 4.0, having direct advantages in terms of circularity and environmental sustainability. So therefore there are so many opportunities, and through a transparent communication of its sustainability process, the company can take advantage, can benefit a lot, and it may become, let me say, attractive and sexy towards potential investors who are increasingly addressing listed companies, but companies also which are the expression of a real economy. So therefore sustainability can become a source of opportunity, raising awareness, especially for our future, which presents challenges like, coronavirus, which we could not even anticipate or imagine. So I would like to close my presentation inviting you at the conference that we are going to have in October in Florence, and I hope that I have provided you with insights that we may continue analyzing in the next months. So thank you, Elisabetta. We have listened to Professor Baglieri on cost of ownership and Mrs. Bettina on sustainability and circular economy, and what should be done by the Rotogravure technology industry to upgrade it. So now we have a question and answer session, Q&A session, and I would like to invite all. I would like everybody to be as concise as possible. The first question to Mr. Briganti. So in this period of great uncertainty of the market, how do you see the outlook of the rotogravure printing market in terms of volume and orders? Because because we are seeing changes in Europe, but also in Asia and the Middle East, but also in North America. So, all right. Let me say that in terms of projections in this moment of time, it's very much complicated to provide indications. But in any case, maybe we can rely on trends, the growth trends relating to rotogravure technology before the coronavirus outbreak. So maybe we can say that from in terms of figures, let me retrieve the figures. Well, we expect by year end to register a reduction in demand, which is slightly higher than the demand for Flexo. Why that? Because we have benchmarked the data available and we measured them with the data provided by the IMF on the 2020-2021 span. However, this is just provisional. These are just provisional data which we do not circulate because it is very much difficult in this moment in time to ensure a consistency of data, because of course the COVID crisis is really disruptive. This is a pandemic, and so therefore the impact is global. But in any case, each country, also in terms of production and consumption, applies different strategies. So this is very difficult to tell. So therefore, I would also like to leave the floor to Maggioni and Baglieri so that they can also express their opinion on their and their perspective. Well, Andrea talked about the machinery. I would like to instead consider the market from the print. Again, it's true, it's very much difficult to, make projections because we don't know what's going to happen in 10 days and we don't know what the government would decide. But in such a moment of uncertainty, consumers tend to buy products, basic products. So maybe consumers are no longer ready to pay a premium price for niche products with special packaging, but concentrate on basic needs, the satisfaction of basic needs. So therefore, with regard to this, also with regard to the rotogravure technology, this goes in favor of it. I don't know whether Enzo wants to add anything in this respect. Yes, as Andrea and Gianmatteo were saying, well, it's very complicated to, give any projections. I believe that it's worth remaining prudent. It is true, the pandemic is global, but reactions from different governments and from different markets are different. And, this, of course, generates additional uncertainty. And among the economists, we prepare scenarios that do not exclude in September and October, maybe shorter lockdown periods, because if we consider France, Spain, Germany and Italy overcome this period, then there might be a longer wave of other countries, and therefore generating repercussions in our territory. So in terms of uncertainty, I confirm what Gianmatteo was saying, and it is also very much important to reassure clients and customers, and therefore in the upcoming months we need to assure customers with productions very much focused on quality and lower prices, and Rotogravure and printing technology, which is very high quality and very much reliable, becomes therefore strategic. However, creative designers not very often know this or are aware of the advantages that Rotogravure technology can provide, and therefore it is very much worth stressing this. So other questions? Well, of course, some of these questions that we have received imply longer discussions, so therefore we will postpone them to our meeting in October. But we have a short time left, but I would like to remind you that if you wanted to receive the presentations presented by the speakers, you should write to info@acimga.it, and the session has been video recorded, and the video recording will be uploaded in the official website of Acimga. So I would like to ask Gianmatteo a couple of questions that we have received with regard to the recovery of ink and the cost of ink. How much does it impact? And for those who wanted to invest in a more sustainable technology in terms of inks, what kind of facilities are made available to make the use of this of ink more advantageous? Well, I'm not an expert in inks because I'm an expert in cylinder engravers, but in addition to inks, I believe that the question related also to solvents. Yes, of course, I do apologize, moderator said. Yes. Yes, a recovery of ink and recovery of solvents. Well, this implies a high investment for sure, but the company making such investment will see a return. I believe, am I right, Enzo? Because you started this. Yes, the company expects a return on it, so recovery of a solvent that it can resell. And I believe that I would like to invite those interested in this topic to contact us at info@acimga.it, so that we can establish contacts with the operators in this field. A question from India. Different people from India ask, so these 20 years of Rotogravure technology, does it mean that this can hold true also for can this be also expanded to India and Southeast Asia? And I would like Enzo and Andrea to answer this question. So this 20 years of duration, can this be extended also to the possibility of using this equipment in India and Middle East countries? Well, the duration of the machinery depends on the know-how. So wherever you have a know-how and organizational ability, wherever you can produce with quality, yes, the answer is yes. So essentially, I would say yes, provided that you have know-how and organizational capacity. So this goes beyond the technical aspects, but it focuses on competencies. Do you want to add anything, Enzo? Because during your presentation you underlined this aspect of steel and everything. Well, let me say that distinctive element is focused on Germany and Italy, and obviously here we have reliability and competency. Yes, for sure. This also ensures that time span that was mentioned, 20 years and even more. And we see companies which faced difficulties and who sold their equipment, and through revamping, the equipment could be used for a longer period of time. But there are also other aspects to consider which create a difference between the Italian rotogravure producers and the German ones. So German operators focus on reliability, on providing a standard and imposing customers to adapt to that standard. That of course also ensures durability. Italian producers, on the other hand, create a competitive advantage, because in addition to this long-term performance, they also developed a high level of adaptation of the equipment to customer needs. And if we add the ability to provide a greater level of customer service, well, in this case, I believe that Italian producers can also rely or leverage on a competitive edge. But I do agree with Gianmatteo when he said that, of course, it depends on the know-how. And I would like to add that, of course, it's also very much important to work on maintenance, periodic, ordinary maintenance, in order to keep the machinery in good health conditions, in a sort of way. So we need to test the machine periodically, because otherwise the life cycle is reduced dramatically. We have so many questions, and again, as I mentioned earlier on, we will answer these questions in the event that we are going to have on the 23rd of October in Florence, and hopefully in face-to-face, and we will see the evolution of the situation, but hopefully we will meet in person and we will talk about rotogravure technology, and this is going to be another key Roto4All event. I would like to remind you that you can contact info@acimga.it to receive the presentations of the speakers of today's sessions. You can also include your questions. So I would like to thank all the speakers, Gianmatteo Maggioni, Andrea Briganti, Vincenzo Baglieri, and Professor Bettina. And I would also like to thank the interpreter who has translated the whole session in English. So see you at the next session in Florence.